That's a very, very important part, the 11th pillar. And the last one is server meshing. So when we get server meshing, that is, we think, the last piece of the puzzle to have the full game experience. Right now, we have about 50 players on a server. With server meshing, we'll be able to get to thousands of players playing concurrently in the same locations, star systems. They're not all going to be able to have 1,000 people dogpiling together. They won't be able to render it all at the same time, but you certainly will be able to have 1,000 people on the planet of Hurston, for instance. So the server meshing is the last key piece, because that will allow us to have a truly massively populated universe. In terms of what we would think is the experience when you guys can sit in and play the game, when we get to full persistence and server meshing, that's our marker. That's our marker.
This was CitizenCon 2018, 2 whole years after 4.0 was announced as Star Citizen's long-term goal. And after 8 years of waiting, so many delays I refuse to count, and many missed predictions, the goal is within reach along with the single most important feature to the game's success: server meshing. The necessary step to an actual MMO, huge performance improvements across the game, and the improved performance of many other systems. But that's not all that's included. 6 new planets and 6 new moons fall under the jurisdictions of gangs and militias. Ships will run on physicalized components and life support systems, and towns with localized gameplay will be added to the game. Much like 3.0 all those years ago and 2.0 before it, this will be a paradigm shift for players, and the beginning of a new phase in Star Citizen's development. But it's a technology-focused update, and you remember what happened the last time we waited for one of those. Delays and stuff. That said, I do think we'll see it in the PTU at least this summer. I'll explain why, what's in the update that'll change the game for you, and why it's all really about the defining technology that is server meshing. This is your early preview of Star Citizen 4.0. Thank you for coming to my Tomato Talk. Outposts are expanding in the colonialism archetype, adding larger settlements meant to support localized gameplay and missions. We've seen these settlements teased as far back as 2020 when colonialism was just a 2D idea. With so much time to cook, we should be seeing some fairly robust new locations in 4.0, and if CIG can add missions to match, they should offer solid new expansion for players willing to traverse the new star system. These larger outposts won't be replacing what we already know. The utilitarian-styled outposts in Stanton will likely be updated at some point, but will retain their styling to diversify star systems and locations going forward. We've covered space stations on this channel before too. The first rest stops, the evolution of their interior spaces, only to be outpaced by huge exteriors now feeling a bit disconnected. The next generation of stations arrives with the new star system. Similar utilitarian-style stop-offs as the Stanton system provides, these stations are mostly decrepit, broken down, and largely uninhabited. They will now be defined by themes and archetypes that will help players better understand what to expect and diversify the experience, similar to what we're seeing with ground locations. For the initial release, they have 26 stations planned. This may sound like a lot for a system like Pyro compared to 24 stations in Stanton, but as I said, several of these stations will be completely or partially abandoned, and many more will be dangerous or only offering services to members that are friendly to their faction. Also good to remember, the system is twice the diameter of Stanton, so everything is much more spread out. Hopefully when these systems do show up, they feel distinctly different than what we have now. The Pyro system itself is coming in Alpha 4.0 with all this included. It'll be our first new system in 9 years, dating back to Alpha 2.0 in 2015. It brings with it 6 new planets and 6 new moons, a pulsing star that sends out destructive waves of solar energy every so often, and a host of new factions that govern the space differently than what we've known so far. This is Star Citizen's Frontier, an unclaimed system where everything goes if you know the right people and whose turf you're on. Rather than corporations, this system is run by gangs and unaffiliated groups who withhold services, guns, and shelter from enemies while treating their friends well. This system is going to be a playground for the reputation system that recently began seeing more development. It'll offer an improved experience building rep with groups to angle your way into specific missions and opportunities, and with a more lax and segmented system of laws and rules, you'll be able to experiment and take part in gameplay that may be more frowned upon in the starting system. There is a lot coming with the Pyro system that we'll go over later in the quarter. By release, we should have an even better idea of how it might actually change your gameplay. And of course, we're going to have to talk about the factions you'll encounter there. Xenothreat is an obvious one, as this is where the attacks on Stanton have already been coming from, but we'll begin interacting with them as possible standers-by, outpost occupants, and even store clerks depending on if you align with them. The Headhunters are also in Pyro. More of a Mad Max kind of looking group that we've heard about so many times, I'll be glad when they're finally in the game. We don't know much about them other than their looks and location though, and distinctly their info at CitizenCon did not say that we could gain reputation with them. Then there's the Rough and Ready group, a faction that tends to frequent the stations of Pyro, offering services to those they are friendly with and using tattoos as a way of denoting rank and status. Through allying with them and running missions, they'll offer you exclusive tattoo designs for your character as well. There are also the Citizens for Pyro, an unaffiliated group who wants to expand the non-outlaw population in Pyro until it can become a part of the human government. They just may use outlaw behavior to do it. After these groups, there are the Overlords and the Fire Rats, which are two additional Pyro gangs that we still haven't seen confirmed since last CitizenCon. It would be a disappointment to see the system launch without all the factions, so we'll see if they're added between now and then. While all of this would have been possible without server meshing, as anytime a player used the new jump point feature, the game could probably just transition you to a new server, the transition becomes a lot more seamless with the tech. This will be felt by players through the game continuing inside of jump points, as you have to steer your ship through the wormhole and into the new system or risk something happening to you. We don't really know yet. But server meshing's real strength comes from that seamless transition. The ability to move a player between two servers without a noticeable pause in their motion, those around them, their ship, or even the gunshots being fired on board a ship traveling between two servers. This is the milestone that held Star Citizen 4.0 back from release in 2021, 2022, and 2023. It's one of the primary reasons for such bad performance in the game. NPCs not responding much? It's likely the server's not running well. Your ship just randomly exploded? Probably the server didn't load an obstacle that the game knew to be there. And on. Server performance really hurts this game, and when one star system can be split into 10 different servers instead of one, the experience and player cap should improve drastically. And while this isn't the actual pie-in-the-sky goal of dynamic server meshing, this will be likely the biggest milestone Star Citizen has ever hit to date. So I look forward to seeing how it's involved in 4.0. If you want to know more about this feature, you can check out my two recent videos covering the topic and the successful public player tests that happened earlier this year. And don't forget the mission and transit system refactors that are also planned to come with server meshing in 4.0. These are way more important than they may seem, as once these systems are purpose-built for their underlying infrastructure, that is, server meshing, I think we can expect them to run much better and way more consistently than they ever have before. But I do want to be clear, while this is a "we've finally made it" sort of update, it's still just step one of server meshing. The lofty goals and game-changing performance improvements that defined this game will still be a process to achieve. 4.0 is just the first time that process has been able to actually start. Engineering and life support are such big topics, I won't get into them too deeply here. Stay tuned for another video on them soon, or check out my deep dives and recent gameplay on the other channels. These two systems though are a big part of expanding multi-crew gameplay by encouraging more non-combat oriented teamwork on ships and in vehicles, and also limiting ships in their range, crew size, and risk factor. Everything from power management to gravity control to HVAC customization will be an option with these systems. You'll be able to decide whether you want to fight fires with an extinguisher or vent the room of oxygen, losing your own precious supply. You can choose to run your ship on the bare essentials, or you can pre-tune your ship to run overclocked as you fly around the system. You can break onto somebody else's ship and sabotage their systems from the inside, or you can knock out components and shut a ship down without it blowing up. This is another part of the more group-focused gameplay that is finding its way into Star Citizen as higher player counts and larger ships begin to become a reality. On top of that, in the long term, ships won't explode when they're beaten. They will simply be disabled through engineering components, allowing people to either call for help or be boarded. Dating back as early as 2013 in concept, engineering is part game balance, part multi-crew catalyst, and all about focusing on the most important part of the game, the ships. That being said, you'll eventually find it in stations, outposts, and cities as well. just not in 4.0. Also keep in mind this is not going to have as big an impact on smaller ships as you may think, so don't panic. For a while now, we've known charge and drain functionality was planned for the game. The progress tracker shows as much, but it showed development ending a while ago. Without warning, it's been scheduled for the next update, providing multi-tools the ability to charge and drain power from objects in the game. Many items in the game will run on batteries and portable generators. This, combined with the resource network that drives engineering gameplay, should mean there will be systems and ships, space stations, towns, outposts, caves, and other locations that will react to you power balancing the system. Shutting things off, starting them back up, and interacting more with the environment is the goal here. But we'll have to wait and see just how pervasive this will be in the game. Early signs tease the ability to remove distortion damage from components as well, which will make this a key development for mechanic engineers on ships looking to keep their ship operational during battle. But it also hints at overclocking systems, which could be part of the gameplay plan for the tuner engineer, the person who wants to set up ship systems pre-flight to make sure everything runs at 110%. Overall, it's a relatively small feature with potentially big impacts. After 3.23's major UI update, we can only be hungry for more. And it looks like in 4.0, more of those CitizenCon updates we saw will grace ships in-game. This means the updated, more streamlined HUD will be applied to all ships, adding to your visibility. This will also start to make it possible for each ship manufacturer to have their own HUD design. We've seen many looks at Aegis, but we've also gotten quick looks at potential Drake HUDs that overall got me excited for the customization. Then there are the MFDs, your multi-function displays, which will now be able to be pinned, saved on a per-ship basis, customized to your heart's content, and streamed onto your helmet view so you don't have to keep looking at the screens. In addition, using these MFDs, your ship-specific key bindings can be set and saved, screen functionality can be customized, and about 100 key bindings have been added to allow better navigation and use, similar to what you'd find in Elite Dangerous. This is part of the ongoing effort to update all UI in Star Citizen to use their own system and pick up the quality of the game overall. The Zeus is the newest series of ships in the certified Fresh Zone. That's what I'm calling all the 2 to 4 person ships between 25 and 60 or so meters in length. I'll be covering this group of ships in a later video, but know the Zeus ES is a perfect example of this class. Coming in at 45 meters in length, this is a 3-person ship with good shielding, robust scanning and radar capabilities, and adequate interior for long trips, and some cargo space for transportation and some possible light trading. Overall, this looks set to be one of the best small to medium daily driver general purpose ships meant for a multitude of gameplay styles. For that reason, it'll likely be one of the more common ships you see out there. I'll have more to say about it in the lead up to 4.0, as I'm quite a fan of what it stands for, though the jury's still out on the looks. Meanwhile, the other 2 ships in this series will come in the following updates, so just this one scheduled for 4.0. This is probably the least consequential addition on the list, besides the additional character features we aren't really covering, but cows still matter. After the first full-function fauna, the Copion being more of a predatory animal, the next will be the Kazi Grazer, or Space Cow. It's a seed animal that is often used as part of the ecosystem terraforming process on new planets in human space. For this reason, it'll likely be the most common animal we see in the game, showing up on farms, in villages and towns, in the wild, and in some dishes. Jeez. Each full-function fauna added will essentially be an NPC, so behaviors, timelines, and interactions with others whenever the system can actually handle computing all of that will hopefully be visible in this patch or shortly after. Some other things that currently aren't listed but might be included in this update just based on my own hunches include the new quantum travel system, which brings with it quantum boost, the ability to short jump in any direction, and improved effects, UI, and controls. Then there is the quantum economy simulation, which we know will have a Star Citizen Live episode this quarter, so that could point towards more progress on the implementation of it in 4.0. Then there are investigation missions, which have been on the back burner for a while after being introduced at CitizenCon 2022. These could bring some more much needed narrative and diverse gameplay to the game. There are still several first-person features that we haven't seen: item wear and tear, player sliding, FPS scan and radar, radiation damage, more interaction improvements, and a couple of new weapons. There's really no knowing what else we could see in the lead up to the big update, but you can be sure that in between now and the update, things will change a bit. This is a big update. The features are fairly significant in what they can bring to the game for all players, but the only guarantee here is server meshing. After 8 years of waiting from the announcement, a huge milestone has been reached, and Star Citizen's development will inevitably take a new direction just as it did after 3.0. Nobody really knows what direction that will be, but I imagine it'll have more to do with in-depth missions, base building, crafting, and other things that players might consider late game, along with polishing up systems and building out the professions. And again, I want to stress the benefits of server meshing will ultimately take some time, but 4.0 could be the beginning of the end for Star Citizen in alpha. If you'd like to get high quality updates on what's going on, you can subscribe here. You'll also see weekly feature updates from me, live streams multiple times a week, and more content on my long form channel Space Tomato 2 and my new gameplay channel. If you'd like to support me and my wife doing all of this, you can also get exclusive higher quality updates every month, or even your referral code in our referral code randomizer under every video by becoming a supporter here on YouTube or over on Patreon. Whatever you do decide, I hope you learned something new in this video, and I'll catch you in the next.